Mr. Hicks, please give us your name and who you're with for the record, and we appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you. I'm David Hicks. I'm
I'm sorry, I don't hit the little microphone in front of you. Is the green light on, or it is on? Okay, well, just if you would, at least for my sake, I'm a little hard of hearing from operating too much power equipment without ear protection. If you could lean into the mic, I sure would appreciate it.
All right. I'm David Hicks. I'm director of the 23rd Judicial District Drug Task Force, and we have Stewart, Houston, Humphreys, Dixon, Cheatham, and counties, and I work for General Dan Alsobrooks.
Thank you. And when you say you work for General Dan, what was the last name?
Alsobrooks.
Alsobrooks. Okay. And I guess it's just a brief question before we get into your presentation. So at least in your district, the local DA hires or appoints the director. Is that correct? And is that how it's done throughout the state?
Sorta, kinda.
Kinda. Okay.
And the board of directors approves everything that happens. If I may, I probably need to start out in the beginning.
Go ahead and start from the beginning, sir.
Okay. I was sheriff of Stewart County from September 1st, 1978 until August 30th of 1996, at which time I left, I resigned, and went to work for the district attorney's office. I'm thinking it was around 1987. Kenneth Atkins was the district attorney for the district, and he called a meeting with myself, who was a sheriff, Jimmy Mobley, who was sheriff of Houston County, Don Martin, who was sheriff of Dixon County, Doris Weekly, who was sheriff of Cheatham County, and Ronnie Tunjet, who was sheriff of Humphreys County. When we got to the meeting, he told us about Governor McWhorter was wanting to form this drug task force. And I forgot how much grant money was supposed to be at $60,000, I'm thinking, or something like that. And the way this was supposed to work, this grant money was supposed to be used to buy equipment and buy money, and then the agencies were supposed to contribute men and equipment and have a district-wide drug unit. All our areas are rural. We don't have a lot of big departments where they do a lot of narcotics work or didn't at the time. Excuse me. Counties like where I was from, Stewart County, Houston County, Humphreys County, barely had the manpower to cover their shifts. We could not appoint officers and assign them full-time to the drug task force. We just didn't have the personnel to do it. We also didn't have the money nor the equipment to do it. And what they ended up doing was hiring a couple of guys and then trying to just piece together whatever equipment they could get. And it was not a very good situation. It worked out for 2 or 3 years, and things started getting a little better. Some of the, I think Dixon and Cheatham County had enough people that they started putting a man in and made it a little bigger. But it never did provide the coverage and help that we needed in our district. And we were beginning to see a pretty substantial drug problem at that time. It was mostly marijuana, and I would be tickled to death. That's all we had now. But as you all know, it's progressed into a lot of cocaine, heroin. We have a real bad problem with prescription drugs. That's probably our number one problem. But our number one menace is the meth problem. We have about 3 of our counties that really have a bad meth problem. Well, kind of shorten this a little bit. In 1996, Dan had an opening for another district attorney. He already had one working, who was Ted Tarpley, and he asked me if I would like to have that job. And I gladly took it. I wanted to get out of supervision of men, and I wanted to get away from that jail. I'd been in 5 lawsuits, and every one of them was over that jail. And it was, I was just really stressed out with that job. And I went to work for Dan September 1st, 1996. In October, he called me in. He'd had quite a bit of trouble with the prior director. The prior director made a lot of the board members mad, and he was not helping Dan out very much politically. And Dan called me in and told me he was going to put me in charge of the drug task force, and I really was not happy about that because I felt like it was jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. And but I took it and have held that position ever since then. I'm going to guess about 10 years ago. Well, I'll back up. We had a grant at one time where we hired 2 interdiction agents, and they really didn't have very much training, didn't know what they were looking for. They worked hard, stopped a lot of cars, but they really didn't show a lot of progress in seizing drugs and money on the interstate. We tried using them on the rural roads too, and it just didn't work out very good, so that grant ran out. Then later, Jerry Farrell, who was a retired state trooper, had a lot of interdiction experience, and came and talked to me about the possibility of creating an agreement with Fairview Police Department, who was not in our jurisdiction. They were next door to us in Dixon. They didn't have the interstate to work, and we didn't have anybody working. So they agreed to come in and if we would work out an agreement, and they would work for us, and we would split assets. And whatever cars they seized and whatever money they seized, we would split 50-50. Well, it was kind of win-win for me because I wasn't putting anything in it. And it wasn't very long till, and Jerry was good, and Darren Adams was good, and Jerry's son who worked there was really good. They knew what to look for. They knew what to, how to stop and how to talk to people. And it wasn't very long till we had quite a bit of money built up, and so did they at 50%. So I talked to Dan about, we were working out of a real small building, and I talked to him about buying some land and building our own facility, because we were just renting that one. I had to fuss with Dan quite a bit. He didn't want to do it, but eventually he gave in, and the board of directors agreed to. We got some architects, and we built a building which was about $780,000, and we bought 8 acres in Dixon from Dixon City that they were wanting to get rid of. And since then, we have also built a garage where we can unload semi-trucks if we need to. If we come in and we suspect that they're hauling large amounts of drugs, we can do that. We have, at this time, 8 full-time drug agents, and that they are the narcotics agents who work out into the counties. 4 of them are paid by the Drug Task Force, and 4 of them are assigned. One is assigned from Dixon Police Department. Another is assigned by, well, 3 of them are assigned by Dixon PD. One is assigned by Dixon County Sheriff's Department. And we have 3 interdiction agents in addition to the drug agents. 2 of them are paid for by the task force, and 1 is assigned by McEwen Police Department. The other sheriffs and police departments contribute in different ways by supplying manpower when we're in their counties. When we got agents needing to go on search warrants, or they don't have somebody to go with them on drug buys, and so everybody pretty much participates in some way in our counties, and it's got to where here in the last 5 or 6 years that most of the smaller counties, Stewart, Houston, and Humphreys, pretty much depend on the Drug Task Force to handle their drug work. They funnel all the drug complaints through us, as it should be, if we're going to take the lead in doing that. We also have agents that all of them have been certified in meth labs, and we have seized 30 meth labs in the last year. I have brought the stats here. In a little over a year, we have made, I think it's 453 drug cases in our 5-county district, and about 150 of those with either meth or meth-related drug cases. And I know you want to know about the interdiction. Our guys do seize large amounts of money on the interstate. But before they seize it, we must be able to show that it is drug money. We do not seize money that we don't believe is drug money. For instance, one man came through and had $50,000. It's been 3 or 4 years ago, cash money. They asked him what he was doing with it. He said he was on his way to some place to buy a semi. The officers called the bank. He told them where the money came from. The bank verified it. They sent him on his way. And they do that with anybody that they feel that those people don't have to prove to us that it's not drug money. We have to prove that it is drug money. And the vehicles, we have to prove that they sold drugs from it. We have to prove that they transported drugs with it, or they used drug money to buy it.
Mr. Hicks, or Director Hicks, if I could stop you just a moment. I'm sure there's going to be some questions. I know I have some, but I want to look to the other committee members first, specifically on interdiction and the processes around interdiction. Are there any questions from any of the members at this time? Senator Kelsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Director, you've brought up the very issue that is the big one, where all the allegations have been made. And as recently as this April, News Channel 5 ran a story in which they were saying that a gentleman lost $160,000 in cash, and it took him forever to get that money back. How did that instance happen?
Now, who is this?
This was a New York man losing $160,000 on I-40 in Dixon County that was being used for a grocery store purchase.
He was not from Dixon. Was he Russian? Do you know?
I thought it was of Indian descent.
Well, there's a lot more of that story that hasn't been.
And that's why that's why I'd love to hear your. That's why you're here, is to tell it.
Well, I'm kind of reluctant to do so. As far as I know, that case was turned over to Homeland Security and is still under investigation. I'm really reluctant. I can tell you that money had terrorist ties overseas. I will tell you that.
Then why was it returned to him?
DEA returned it to him. We didn't. If it's the case I'm thinking about. I wanted our interdiction supervisor to be here because I felt like some of these questions were going to come up, but he is in Texas teaching other interdiction officers, and he could not be here this week. I would like to extend an invitation to all of you. I think you could get some questions answered that I really wouldn't want to answer out in public because of security problems. We work closely with the DEA and the TBI on a lot of cases that we really don't need to be talking about here. But I would extend an invitation to you to come to our task force building in Dixon. It's not that far. Every one of you should tell me what day you want to come, and we'll sit down and talk off the record about those type cases. But I do know that the same stories that were told, that same reporter was given all the records, and about 80% of the money seized, the victim or the people that had the money either gave a statement that it was drug money, where it was coming from and where it was going to, or that I've never seen that money before. But that was not reported.
Well, in this particular story, and you may be thinking about a different one, but this was an Indian-American businessman from New York. $160,000 was seized, and ultimately the U.S. Attorney's Office gave $155,000 back. So if if that were terrorist money, I just don't understand why they would give that money back to him.
They gave him $5,000 of it back. Is that right?
They kept $5,000 and gave the $155,000.
I mean, well, yes, that's the one I'm thinking about.
Okay, that is the one. So that's potentially still under investigation.
Yes, sir. It was last. The interdiction agent's only going to be gone this week. He teaches the Desert Storm to all the interdiction agents throughout the country. He goes 2 or 3 times a year, but he will be back after this week. And
why does it take so long to get this money back?
The DEA had the money. We didn't have it.
I understand that. I'm just asking. I really don't know the process other than what I heard Ms. Kennedy testify to, which I assume is slightly different in a federal court setting. But why does it take so long to get this money back if they're ultimately going to give it back to them?
Well, I don't know why the DEA kept it. Quite a bit of the money that we have seized has been the DEA asking us to stop them, and we stop them and turn the money over to them.
And you do that? Do you turn all of your funds and your DTF over to the
No,
DEA?
only if they ask us to make the stop for them.
Okay. And is this, because I live west of here, so I drive I-40 all the time, that segment, along with my colleague, Senator Finney. Is this, are those DTF agents that hang out at exit at mile marker 156, is that your district?
I think that's Metro.
Okay.
I think it is. Or then they in black, unmarked.
Well, a lot of times I see Ashland City Police vehicles out there when they're marked vehicles.
Well, our unit don't work up that far.
Okay. So that's with a different drug task force.
If it's Ashland City or Metro, work in that area there.
And by Metro, you mean Metro Davidson County?
Yes.
Okay. Well, they you probably don't know the mile markers as well as I do, having driven it this many times over the 10 years that I've been in the legislature. But Metro starts at around miles 192, so this is a good bit east of there at 156.
They could.
I mean, a good bit west. I'm sorry, good bit west. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Kelsey. Senator Campfield, you recognized.
Thank you. You made comment, speaking of that situation that Senator Kelsey brought up, that you turned over the report to the press that you thought validated your claim that the money was rightfully taken.
That's correct.
What was in that report that you feel validated your claims that the money was drug money or terrorism money?
Statements from the people we took it to that said that.
The people you took it from didn't say it was for a grocery store. They said it was for drugs or for terrorism.
Well, this one he's talking about, the federal officials told us that it was ties to terrorists.
But the person driving did not say it was tied to. So you had previous knowledge of them coming through, and it was them that said, pull this car over, or this truck, or whatever they were driving. I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. I know they took the seizure. But last week, the DEA called our unit and told them what kind of car was coming through, and they wanted us to pull them over. And they told us how much money was in the vehicle, and they wanted us to seize it, but they didn't want them to know that they were under surveillance by the DEA. So, and that happens quite frequently.
But you turned that information over to the press. Is that what you're saying?
We haven't that. No, that was all, everything went to the DEA.
Okay, because I thought you said earlier, maybe I'm mistaken, I thought you said earlier that you turned it over to, that you heard about that story, and you said it wasn't the whole story, and you had turned over the entire file to the press, and that they did not report it anyways.
No, I'm talking about other
situations?
Other situations that had been turned over, yes.
Okay, you mentioned earlier, you said 80%, I believe, of them where someone had admitted this was drugs, or they didn't know where the money came from, something along those lines. Is that correct? Yes,
they'll generally either come out and say, yeah, it's drug money, and a lot of them tell you, you know, they took 30 kilos of cocaine up north, and this is the money coming back. Or they'll say, I've never seen that money before. It's not mine. This is not my car. I borrowed it from a friend, and you ask who the friend is, and they don't know who the friend is. So in those cases, we will seize the money.
Okay. And I understand, I think those are pretty valid reasons to seize. I mean, if somebody's saying, hey, this is drug money, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry.
Well, and you have a majority of them that are in hidden compartments. They're getting pretty sophisticated.
Oh, I understand. And I don't think those are the areas of concern. I think where most people have areas of concern is possibly the other 20%. And maybe you might, where you seize the money of someone who says, hey, this is not drug money, this is not money I'm doing a drug deal, or you don't have foreknowledge of them being terrorists or something along those lines, where the money is seized anyway. I think that's where the concern comes from, is the other possible 20%. Can you speak to those?
Well, there are some people that do that, but we don't do it unless we can prove or have knowledge that it is drug money.
didn't you say that 80% of the time you know that it's drug money or terrorist money, or you have foreknowledge that money could be drug money or terrorist money?
About that, yes.
What's the other 20%?
Well, the other 20% is you stop them and they just won't tell you anything, and you run their background, and they've been stopped in other states for possession of drugs or carrying large amounts of money, and it's been seized from them, and you can use that as evidence that they are drug couriers. We stopped 2 guys, and they were Hispanic. It's been about 3 years ago, and they had $60,000 on them. They said it was their money and just where they've been working. After we ran checks on them, they had been stopped for a large amount of cocaine in California. They had been arrested, served time, had been deported back to Mexico, and were back again. Wouldn't you have took that money?
Well, I'm not in law enforcement, so I'm a legislator. I don't.
But I mean, you know,
I'm not in
common
law
sense would tell you that would be drug money.
Okay. Are there any other situations where someone maybe doesn't have an arrest record or something along those lines, where large amounts of money are in there, and they just say, "Well, I just don't feel like telling you. It's my money, it's my business, where I got it from, and what I plan on doing with it." Have there ever been any situations where that money has been seized?
Not that I know of.
It's pretty much always someone with a drug history record,
Yes, most of the time, yes.
or they admit it. Is there any situations where there is no drug history record, there is no admission of drug dealing or drug use or drug sales, and that money is still seized?
It might. It's possible. You're asking questions that my interdiction supervisor could better answer for you.
I wish he would have come.
Well, he's in Texas. I wanted him to come.
Well, unfortunately, you're left to bear the brunt of his not being here. So, thank you.
Senator Kelsey, you're recognized.
Michael knows about the $160,000 the one you're asking about.
If you would, please make sure the little green light's on.
It's on, yes, sir.
Press the button, and if you would, give us your name and who you're with for the record.
I'm Micheal Pate. I work for the 23rd Judicial Drug Task Force. I've been employed there for 3 years. I'm not in interdiction. However, we are utilized when interdiction stops are made because sometimes we're better at interviewing folks once they come in off the highway. My former boss was really good at it, so I was able to sit in on these type interviews when we take people off the interstate that have large amounts of drugs and large amounts of currency. The particular case that you're speaking about, the $160,000, that case, the Tennessee seizure laws worked perfectly. A stop was made. The 2 people were interviewed. They immediately decided they did not want to answer questions and that they would like their attorney present, which this is the United States and you have that right. But in the preliminary questions that were asked, their answers were different. These 2 guys had driven a long distance across the country in the car together. They couldn't give answers about where they were going, who they were going to see, or what they were going to do. There was clearly something else going on. When they were asked, "Do you have any currency in your vehicle?" the answer was no. There is no money in my car. When they were asked, "Can we search your car?" the answer was yes. Immediately upon searching the car, $160,000 is located. Now, in every walk of life, $160,000 is a pretty good amount of money. At that point, they were brought back to our office. Again, they decided they want to lawyer up. And when federal agencies were contacted about what these 2 people were doing, their names were under investigation by federal agencies. And we can't talk a lot about what those investigations were, but they said, "We're coming." So it was dark outside that night. I don't really remember what time it was. These federal agencies that are a long ways off come to our office. So that tells us that they know exactly who we've got and what we're dealing with. Under the Tennessee seizure laws, We couldn't tie it to drugs, so we could not seize it. Point, we're out of that case. We have no involvement with that case. The federal agencies that came to our office, which there were a couple, they decide that they have the evidence and they have the seizure laws to take that money. That money was not seized under any Tennessee law, nor was it seized by any Tennessee law enforcement officer. It went to a federal agency. If the federal agency decided in their investigation it was a good idea to give that money back, then that's what they decided. I can't go into why they gave it back, but on the local level, sometimes we seize $10,000 from somebody. They give us a lot of information that results in major seizures down the road, which may result in more money coming in, and there may be a civil settlement agreement reached with that person for cooperating where they may receive some of their money back. But in that particular case you're talking about, the current Tennessee laws, we followed them to the T, and we did not seize that money because it could not be tied back to drugs or drug sales.
Chairman Kelsey, if I could ask one follow-up question to that. If the report is correct, the media report is correct, and I'm using the qualifier if, the video of the interdiction that day that seized that money, the officer said, and I quote, "I don't know if, honestly, if we can, in other words, if we can seize it, if we can't link it to drugs, it's still a currency violation." Do we have a currency law in Tennessee?
Not that I'm aware of in Tennessee. There's some federal currency laws, but as far as in Tennessee, we do now have a money laundering statute here in Tennessee. And again, I don't work interdiction. I'm just trying to cover once they came to our office and I was able to see and participate with what was going on, those are the answers that I'm able to give on that particular case.
I understand, Mr. Pate. Maybe this would be better directed to Director Hicks. What could your officer have been referring to when he said it's still a currency violation? Now, there may be a currency law in the state under Tennessee state statute.
Did he
I'm
say
not an
that?
attorney, but I'm not familiar with it.
Did he say that?
That is according to the media report. That's a direct quote from the video. He said, and I quote, "I don't know honestly if we can't, in other words, if we can seize it, if we can't link it to drugs, it's still a currency violation." And
Well,
again,
I
that's
would
a-
prefer
that's a
to
quote.
listen to the video than I had the media report. Just to be honest with you before I answer to that.
I understand. I'm sure that video could easily be obtained. It's probably in the hands of the media, and we'll probably see it sometime before the day's over. But is there a currency law that you know of? I guess that's my question.
Not that I know of.
Okay, thank you. Senator Kelsey, you're recognized. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you've brought up exactly the issues that I'm trying to get my head around here, which is what are the federal crimes, what are the state crimes, and then ultimately why we're here is should we be changing state statutes in light of some of the testimony that we're getting. And so that brings up another case, which was, this is from actually May of 2011. And this is another News Channel 5 report that says video shows officer offering truckers freedom for cash. And there you've got the officer on video saying, "Hey, I'm not asking you if you have knowledge about it," talking about the cash, "and I won't ask you if you have any knowledge about it. You understand me? It's not my job. All I'm asking you is, where's the money? I don't even care where you got it. I want the product. That's what I'm after."
That's not our officers.
No, this is not in your district. This was in the 21st district. My question to you is that type of questioning, is that proper in your district?
Well, I wouldn't think so if that's all there is to the story. Sometimes as you all know, when you get stories from the media, you don't get the whole story.
But my concern is, if our drug task forces are out there seizing money and not ultimately charging anybody with a crime, that is a major problem that we've got to rectify in the state.
Well, let me say this. The director from 21st is here. He may be able to answer that question for you.
Okay, well, that's up to the chairman.
Senator Kelsey, I would more than welcome the director of the 21st. Didn't know he was here. Would more than welcome the director of the 21st to step forward if he would like to. And Senator Kelsey, you're recognized to continue. What?
It sounds like he doesn't want to answer these.
He said
Questions?
he said he's not prepared to testify.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
but let me continue with my question, which is this, which is in the 21st district. Then you do have the DA there, and she's quoted in the story as saying this: "I would love to see our legislature make a change so that we can make those arrests on the sides of the roads with these guys." What change would you like to see us make to the law so that we can actually arrest the people that we're seizing the money from?
Well, I think some of the changes were already made after that. That we are arresting people for money laundering where we didn't have the correct law and it has been passed, and we have been arresting people for money laundering now.
So you feel like you do have the tools now to actually charge folks after you're seizing their cash, and you don't simply have to pass it off to the feds every time.
I think as far as our interdiction guys, I think they're satisfied with it. They talked to me about that Tennessee don't have a statute for these hidden compartments to charge the people with them, because we're talking about sophisticated hidden compartments. They're not like the roll down seats in a van. We stopped one car. It was a Ford Taurus that had hydraulic cylinders in the roof, and the roof of the car, you could push a button and it would raise the roof up, and then you could store money and drugs in it. That car had $200,000 in the roof. He'd taken the drugs somewhere in the roof, brought the money back. No telling how many trips he'd made up and down through there before our guys found it. But we really need a compartment law, I think, that makes it illegal for those to have those compartments, and they could be arrested for it.
And whom would you go to if you were going to try to suggest changes to the legislature?
I don't know. I've never done that before. I guess I talked to my DA.
Isn't that Mr. Durham's job, is to be talking to you guys about putting this legislation together to bring to the legislature?
Probably, or Wally or some of the DAs,
But you and he have never discussed that.
yeah. I mean, you just asked me what I would, what I'd.
Well, I just want to make sure that we do have a good avenue of communication taking place here. Certainly, Mr. Kirby and I speak on a regular basis, and because if when we do have DAs who are making statements like that in the media that they don't have the laws in the books to charge these people, then somebody needs to be bringing that to us so that we can change the laws. I mean, that's what we're ultimately here to do today as well. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Senator Campfield, do you still wish to be recognized? All right, thank you. Mr. Hicks, I've got several questions, and they're not about specific cases, more general questions. And they're interdiction questions, though, for the most part. Do you keep does your drug task force unit keep record of all traffic stops?
Yes.
All of them, regardless of whether they lead to any type of seizure or conviction, every traffic stop?
Let me back up. I'm not completely sure of that.
Okay. And that's fine. If you if you can say you're not sure, that you don't know whether you do or not. Do you keep records? And I guess this would go back to, this is almost the same question, of how many of those stops are successful. And again, that would, and I'm asking this question mainly also for the committee members to think about. some of the allegations that I know I hear are about fishing expeditions, and about how many stops are being made, and sometimes the stops appear to be random or maybe even stops that are where there's some type of profiling mechanism that kicks in and requires them to stop, or doesn't require them to stop, and they do stop somebody. But if they do, if you are keeping records, do you keep records of how many are successful and how many lead to nothing other than a warning?
Oh, certainly, yes. Sir.
Okay. Next
if
question
they
is,
write a citation or arrest them for something, or yes, we have the records. Now we have a policy that if the DEA or Homeland Security takes over a case, we give them the whole file. We turn it all over to them, let them have it, because it's going to be a federal case, and we don't need it and we don't want it. And there's some of those that you'd have to go to the feds to get it. So,
okay. Does your drug task force unit employ may probably the wrong word, or use a drug dog?
yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm assuming many do, most around the state do. Are there any records about how accurate the interdictions are where a drug dog is being used?
Yes, they keep accurate records on all the animals. Right now, we've just got two. One of them died.
Well, it would go back to my original question, though. If you're not keeping records of every stop, and which you're not sure whether you do or not, you don't know how successful the drug dogs are in pointing out which vehicles would have drugs and which would not, which ones would lead to convictions and which would not. That was my question about how successful are the stops initiated by the drug dogs.
That again, we'd have to talk to the interdiction supervisor about. And I'm not trying to be
I understand.
evasive. I know very little about interdiction. I've never worked interdiction, and it's kind of like when I was elected sheriff. Never been in law enforcement before, but I tried to surround myself with people that knew law enforcement until I learned it. But interdiction is just something that I don't really know enough about.
Well, and I'm going to ask the question and just throw it open. Is there anybody in this room who is familiar with interdiction? Because I still have several more questions that are specific to interdiction who would like to come up here and take the stand.
Well, John Etheridge is in, he's the assistant director, and he has been in charge of the interdiction people for quite a while. But somebody else here may have more expertise in interdiction than we do.
I would more than welcome anybody who would like to come up. Again, I have some, like the first couple of questions I asked, I have some general questions regarding interdiction that I would like to ask somebody. If there's nobody here, when we have our next meeting, which we are going to have a next meeting, it probably will be in after the first of the year, we'll make sure that we invite somebody who has specific knowledge of interdiction.
Well, we can get Darren up here, our supervisor, and he can answer any questions you got.
Well, he's not here today, though, is he?
No, sir, he's in Texas.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask you a few more of these and see if you have, see if you can respond to them. I know that most, if not all, of our Tennessee Highway Patrol cars are equipped with cameras to record stops. How many of your drug interdiction vehicles are equipped with cameras?
All of them.
All of them are. So is every stop recorded? Is that
Yes.
part of your protocol?
Yes.
And that's done by your standard operating procedures?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know if that's uniform across the state? Do you know if
I don't know that it is, but it should be.
okay, and that may be one area that we need to look at far as legislation goes, if it's not uniform, and to make sure that that is being done, because it's there not only for the protection of the citizens who are being stopped, but it's there for the protection of the officers who are making the stop as well.
And our cameras are set up where they record back 2 minutes prior to the stop. So if you turn on the lights, it'll record 2 minutes back from when you turned on the lights.
When your officers are conducting a stop, and they're communicating either back and forth with each other or communicating with I guess, who is it, the TBI that who do you communicate with when you do a background check on the side of the road? Mr. Pate, I see you leaning forward. Who does that communication go to?
On the interdiction level, you don't use a local thing. You use something that's referred to as block. And the reason you're doing that is because these officers put in the information every day on who they're seeing at the border, who's being stopped, who's been stopped with large amounts of currency, who's been stopped with large amounts of narcotics. So when the stop is headed the direction where it looks like that something is being carried, whether it be drugs or money, you call block on the phone.
You make a phone call. It's not done by a computer.
That's not on computer. You're going to call them and you're going to say, this is who I am, this is my ID number, and they're going to start giving you information. And they're going to tell you, you're going to get off the phone with them, and they're going to run through all their systems. And you're going to continue your stop. And at some point, they will call back. And they'll call back and say, okay, you have this person who in 2002, 2008, and 2011 was stopped at the border with, and this was the issue. They've been deported this amount of and they'll give you those type answers.
Are those phone calls? You're calling it block.
Yes, you'll hear on a camera system. You may hear us responding to the questions or the answers that are coming over the phone. You're probably not going to hear that person, and then you may see a point to where that information is not publicly made because it may be information that shouldn't be. For example, a federal case is being worked on that, and you start getting phone calls from other agencies saying, terminate the stop, don't terminate the stop, this is what's going on. And you got to remember, they're going to do the same thing we're going to do. On some level, they may not be able to tell us everything at that point. But that's the agency that's the group that we'll use.
And it is a federal agency?
It's I'm not going to say it's a federal. And again, I've worked interdiction about 3 weeks out there, so I have a understanding of how they operate, and I've watched those type stops take place. But that's the group that's the information system is what it is.
Okay, and help me here. Is it a governmental agency or private agency?
I can't answer that. I'm not familiar enough with it to answer that. It's just the agency that I see them, or the organization that I see them use when I'm out there helping with them, or in the couple weeks that I actually went out and worked interdiction.
Okay,
it is a government agency associated with Homeland Security.
Okay. Are those phone records subject to subpoena in a court case?
I could not answer that, sir.
Okay, that's one of the questions and concerns that was given to me by a friend of mine who's an attorney back home who has worked several cases. He wanted me to ask that question. Are there any records kept on the duration of stops? The reason I asked that question, in fact, I was at a local Chamber of Commerce meeting last night and had a conversation with two women, one of them probably in her mid-60s and one of them in her 70s, and we were talking about stops and how you don't have to consent to a search, how an officer can get a subpoena if he believes there's enough probable cause for a search, but you don't have to consent to it. And both of them were surprised, thinking that you could get in trouble for not consenting to a stop. And in my conversation with a couple of people about that, one gentleman talked about a time when he was detained for an extended period of time on the side of the interstate, and he felt like it was to intimidate him. After he refused the search, he felt like it was to intimidate him to submit to the search. And after a while, the officer finally gave up, and he went on his way and was not cited for anything. So that's my reason for asking the question. Do you keep records for duration of stops? Because I could see how that would be an intimidating factor on the side of the interstate if you were essentially led to believe that you could not leave a scene until you submitted to a search.
Well, one, the videotape is going to keep a record of, like he's saying, 2 minutes prior to the stop, and then it's going to be a record of the entire stop until it ends. I worked interdiction out for 3 weeks just to see what it's about. I can tell you that all those stops that we made were within the reasonable amount of times, and that they were detained for the amount of time that it took to do normal police activities, such as warrant checks, driver's license checks, registration checks, and those type things. And the only stop that lasted longer was when we were getting answers that were not consistent with what was going on. When 2 males who'd been in the car for a long period of time started talking about going to different cities and doing different things, at that point we asked them, do you have any drugs in your car? And we got silence. And then we asked, can we search your vehicle? Yes, you can search my vehicle. We found a small amount of marijuana in the front of the car, and then a large amount of marijuana in the trunk of the car. That stop was within the time limits, and until the questions went south, the answers went south, and then the ultimate, we gained consent to search the car and found drugs. At that point, they're not free to leave. So the stop, that video would be a long time. At that point, they're detained. They're not free to leave. And we did make arrest on both those subjects and seized their vehicle, and we seized the currency that they had on them in that particular case.
Yeah, and it sounds like, again, in your district, the use of a camera answers most of these questions.
Yes.
Now, if cameras not being used across the state, then these questions could have different answers. But in your district, the use of a camera would answer them. I've got another question. Do you know if interdiction units, and yours specifically, and other interdictions as well, would use window tinting as a pretext for a stop?
If you're trained on that, for example, I wouldn't, because I haven't received any training on what is too dark, so I personally would not. However, if you have somebody in interdiction that may have worked for an agency where they were trained on that and they're trained to recognize those tents, there's definitely a legal tent and an illegal tent.
Right. I'm
not going to make a stop for that because I'm not trained on that.
Do you have to have a device to measure the tinting? Because I'm sure at some point, and I don't know anything about window tinting, but they're probably measured according to darkness, and whatever that measurement may be, at 50% or below, it's legal. At 51%, it would be illegal. And just to throw out a general term, but is there training that recognizes that off the eye, or would you have to have a device to measure that?
Well, for example, some officers will make a stop on tent that's on the front windshield. They know what the distance is. I do not know what that distance is. So
as far as the distance,
how far down it can come, I'm not going to make that stop because I'm not trained on that, and that's not something I utilize. The mirror tent is not legal, so there's officers that know that. I don't know enough about why it's not legal, what is legal. I wouldn't make that stop. But if you were trained in that area and you say, hey, that's mirror tinting, that's not legal, you would come out and make that stop. And then some vehicles, anybody that, you don't have to be in law enforcement, sometimes you see vehicles where you go, I know that can't be legal. You cannot see in that vehicle. I bet they're having problems seeing me. That's not safe. And you don't have to be trained to know that's not a legitimate tent to be on a vehicle moving up and down the roads. But again, I hope that those officers, if you're making a stop for that tent violation, that you've been trained and you understand exactly what tent is legal and what is not.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Senator Kelsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Hicks, you said you didn't know a whole lot about interdictions, but what percentage of your budget comes from interdictions?
Well, we've got 2 men trained, their salaries. We usually buy 1 vehicle per year, and then the dog feed. Just guessing not having it here. Probably 150,000. Just guessing.
Out of a total budget of what?
$1 million.
Okay. Yeah. Where's the other $850,000 roughly come from?
Okay, you got quite a bit of it goes for salaries and benefits. We pay their
Where's it come from? Not where's it go, but where's the other 850,000 come from?
well, mostly from fines and seizures, forfeitures.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm very confused then. So what percentage of your total budget comes from forfeitures and seizures?
Well, that's kind of confusing question because, all right, we've got these several men assigned. Okay, we don't figure them in our budget when we're making it up, but that is, part of our budget. Most of them make $50,000 a year, probably. So you got, but our actual task force budget usually runs right at $1 million a year, thereabout. All of it, the best I can remember, is coming from forfeitures and seizures. Now you got to bear in mind that all of it don't come off the interstate from those seizures. The drug agent seized a number of cars. We just had a gun auction Saturday that brought $59,000 where we sold guns that had been seized from felons and drug dealers. We have fines come in from the people that have been arrested, and they have been they have been fined money, and they pay it, and it comes back through the court. But the majority of it will come from interdiction.
Okay, well, if the vast majority of your money is coming from interdiction, how are you able to then budget for the upcoming year? That's the same question that we asked.
Well, right
Jim
now
Johnson.
we're fortunate enough we have quite a bit in reserve. We have got about 3 years' budget in reserve, which I like to keep.
So you've got $3 million in reserve?
The last time I counted, we had right about that, yes. And that we know that we can operate for 3 more years if we don't get anything else in.
Okay. Are they? But I assume that you. I assume with this type of budgeting process, though, I mean your revenue spikes in some months, and then other months it's very low. Is that correct?
That's right. You can't tell, when you're going to get money in and when you're not. We also get money from through the DEA. When we help them with cases, we get a percentage of it. We've got a man assigned to the DEA, and we get a percentage of the money that he gets coming in. And I will say that we've got a nice facility. We've got 8 acres over there fenced in. And none of it was bought with tax money. It's all money that was generated from the work of these guys.
And so, because your revenue is spiking each month, do you make then decisions based on that, like authorizing or rejecting overtime?
No.
Can I answer just a little bit of this, just from my side? I'm looking here at a copy that was just given to me of the budget for 2012, and I kind of see what you're getting at. Are we out here predicting that we're going to seize a lot of currency on the interstate, and therefore setting a budget to where those activities have to take place? And a copy of our budget would show that we definitely do not do that. We have an estimated revenue of $657,000. And the way you do, and $343,000 of it is from seizures, either being on the interstate or on the local 5-county level. But our expenditure budget is estimated at $1.1 million, which is a lot higher than our estimated revenues So we're going to rely on the money that's in the account. But there is not a monthly amendment or to come in and say, okay, we did good this month, so let's do the total budget for the year is set at the beginning of the fiscal year, and there's no changes made to that budget throughout the year. There's no incentives to pay made. There's no increases in my wage, and we do not pay overtime at the task force at all. We're a comp time. Working narcotics, you work a lot of hours, and most weeks you work 60 to 80 hours. So it's done on a comp time basis where the agents just simply take the time off after they make these long cases where you put in a lot of hours. But the budget is set at the beginning of the fiscal year, and it remains the same throughout the year. And you're not going to rely on seizures or more money coming in as the year goes on. You cannot do that.
Why would you adopt a budget that spends twice as much money as you expect to receive?
Well, at this point, it's the number of employees that we have at the task force. You're just paying their salaries and their benefits, and you're paying the operating cost. And if you seize, if the money comes in and you seize money that year, that will, for the following year, then you know, okay, we can add an employee or we can take an employee away.
But it may become necessary if the funds dry up, that we may have to lay people off. I mean, in the future. But we knew at the beginning of this year that we had the money for this budget. And we know that we got enough money for the next year for the budget. Now, 2 or 3 years down the road, if the money don't come in, it won't be there. Now, 2 or 3 years down the road, if the money don't come in, it won't be there. We would prefer to have a state budget like the sheriff's departments and police departments, where it's guaranteed every year where these guys have got jobs. They know that if the money dries up, then they don't have a job.
I think I would prefer that as well.
Pardon me?
I said after this testimony today, I think I would prefer that as well.
A follow-up question to Chairman Kelsey's question. I've got a small municipality in my district that one of the line items in their budget is traffic ticket revenue. And I've questioned for years that how that could not automatically create a quota system, because if you don't meet that line item in the budget, then something's got to go. Well, the process that y'all just described as well, even though you've got reserves that get you 2 to 3 years down the road, I still see how it could potentially create a system where you have to seize. There's an incentive to seize so much. As you just said, your officers would be laid off and had to find more work if they didn't receive so much. And it looks to be very similar to the situation in one of my small municipalities where traffic enforcement revenue is a line item in the budget. That it help. I know Senator Kelsey asked that question, but again, help me understand how that does not create a system or a scenario where your officers have an incentive to go out and to seize more money.
Well, it's been that way ever since I've been there in 96. We haven't had that problem. We have good, honest police officers. And if I have one that's not a good, honest police officer, he's not going to be around there. I can tell you that. They don't go out looking for somebody's car to seize it just because he's got a nice car. They go after the people that are dealing drugs. These men work a lot more than what they put down just because they like the job. And this is nothing new. It's been going on with every task force ever since it's been beginning. If the money's not there, but you're having a lot of cities running into the same problem right now. I know Cumberland City had to lay a man off because their revenue was down. and people are kind of hurting now. It's not a good time. Tennessee is in really good shape, and I think it's a lot of it's because of what y'all have done, that you have made it better here for us, and we're not having to worry like some of the other states are. But you know,
Well, and I would quickly say I believe there would be a complete agreement up here with us, with the drug task force units and with the DAs. We'd love to see the drug problem go away and you all get laid off, not for a bad reason, but for a good reason, that the drugs were not there anymore. So I do understand that. Well, Mr. Hicks, I appreciate it. Any further questions? Senator Campfield, you're recognized.
Thank you. You mentioned more or less the jobs are not guaranteed, and if the income goes down, those jobs may go away. On the flip side, if there were huge amounts of fines, busts, whatever, seizures, is there any bonus given out for, say, there were some, say you hauled in $10 million or something along those lines?
No, sir. We have we give out salary supplements to the guys in July and in December for Christmas and vacation, but they are preset and approved by the board.
Does the amount of their seizures have any impact on that amount of the bonuses in any way, shape, or form?
No, sir.
So if they suddenly had a spectacular year and seized $20 million, that's not, they're not going to get one more dollar than they would have the year previous.
Well, you know, if we had that much money, I'd probably give somebody some raises. Yeah, I mean, I don't know it's bonus money, but I would like to see these guys make more money than what they're making.
But currently, there's nothing like that in place where there's, and I'm not, and I guess I can speak, you can speak for yourself, but do you know of any other places that offer bonuses to their officers if there's, let's just say, a very seizeful year or whatever? There's a lot of seizures in that year.
No, what we do is, and I don't know what the other people do, we set out amount of money we're going to give them at Christmas and at vacation time, and get it approved in July when by the board of directors, which we have 9 members on the board of directors now, and they approve it, and that's what they get for that year.
Now, you said earlier that if the money isn't seized, more or less the money's not there, and those people could lose their jobs. If the money isn't there, could they lose those bonuses?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if the money wasn't there, they could lose the bonuses, but we know that the money is there this year because we have the surplus.
So theoretically, then there is a bonus system. If they do seizures, then if there is money, then that can affect their bonuses. Because you just said if the money isn't there, they could lose the bonuses. So if the money is there, they get the bonus. Isn't
well,
that
this
correct?
year, I think you got me confused or something.
Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding. You said if the money's not there,
No, you
don't
said
do
if
the
you got a
seizures.
gazillion dollars, would I give them more money? Yeah, I would give them more money. I'd pay them more if I could right now.
I understand. But you also said, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said if the money's not there, they could potentially lose their jobs, or they could potentially lose those bonuses.
Okay, let's say we know we've got the money in there.
Can you step forward?
I
just
keep
so they
forgetting
can-
about this microphone. We know we got the money in there right now. If something were to happen, we got hit with a lawsuit that did away with half our revenue, then somebody's going to lose their job. But right now, we've got it, you know.
But let's say suddenly seizures went down. Say seizures dropped to a quarter what they are now.
We would probably have to lay off people.
Okay, and possibly bonuses would not be given out?
Well, they're not bonuses or salary supplements. This is what, instead of, and this year they're $3,500. Instead of giving them just the $3,500 raise, we had rather, and I think they had too, give it out, the supplements at Christmas and vacation. Then I know they got money to get their kids and their family something for Christmas, and I know they can go on vacation.
I'm not against
If I add
Christmas,
that
I'm not against
$3,500 to their salary, they're going to spend it.
Yeah, I wonder what is the difference between a salary supplement? Maybe I'm misunderstanding. What's the difference between a salary supplement and a bonus?
No, bonuses, I would think, is for if you were
Based on
doing-
performance?
for performance.
But you
But
just,
every one of them get the same salary supplement.
but pretty much you just said they wouldn't receive that bonus or salary supplement if the seizures were not there. So that is part of their performance, isn't it? Isn't that pretty much the same
Not
thing?
well, if the money wasn't there.
Say they are not doing seizures, therefore the money is not there.
Well, me and you're not on the same page, I don't think, but
Let me answer from somebody who receives it, who receives the money. I make, with that supplement, $39,000 a year. Before that supplement, $36,000, which puts me just out of reach of poverty in some areas of the country. I've been there 3 years. There is no reward system. I make a lot of cases one year, might not make as many the next. This is not a reward system for how much money you seize. I'm not going to get any. I've been there 3 years, so there's been good years during that 3 years. There's been not so good years during that 3 years, and the money doesn't change. My salary remains the same. We're all paid the same. When it comes to people losing their jobs, you got to remember this with a task force. Most task force people are assigned. So when we say they're going to lose their jobs and it goes away, it doesn't mean they're out of a job completely and they're out of income completely. It means they're going back to their departments to do other police activities such as patrol, investigative work, things of that nature.
Mr. Pate, I would, excuse me one second, Senator Kempfield, I would just point of clarification. Many of the Judicial Drug Task Force units hire their own officers. Yours may be assigned. The one in my area is not.
In our case, I'm a paid task force employee.
Right.
So when the money goes away, what would take place is that you would see a reduction in the force there, which may end up being that we don't pay for gas for the assigned people. They have to start paying for their gas again. We don't pay for tires for the assigned people on the vehicles. Right now, we supply assigned people vehicles, so it helps out those departments. They would normally have to have a vehicle for that person, but we're paying for that. So if seizures go down, the goal would be to those things would go away first. You would have to pay for your own car. You would have to pay for your own tires. But there's, I kind of see what we're getting at. There is not a reward system for seizures. There is not a, we're budgeting for these mass amounts of seizures. That doesn't happen. And you can look at a copy of our budget that will show that, and a copy of the audit will show that's not the case. Every business has to budget. You have to do a budget. Every company has to do a budget, and we're no different. We have to do a budget at the beginning of the year with projected revenues. And I understand you're talking about the citation revenue. I see where that causes problems. But basic law enforcement duties are going to produce a certain amount of money. That your area where they have a patrol unit, if they halfway do their job, they're going to generate an amount of revenue. And the way the budget works with these cities and municipalities, you have to put down something in that line item. So you're going to put down what basic law enforcement activities. And I can tell you on this, looking down, what we put down, a well-trained interdiction unit, what's put down on this as their projected revenues is what a average trained interdiction unit can go out there and get. If you put me out there and put this number down, you will not see those returns. I went out there and tried it for 3 weeks. It does take some skill. It takes some ability. It's not just go out there and stop cars. It doesn't work that way. So what's being projected in the budget is the amount that a trained policeman doing his job can generate.
Now, where I have, maybe there's some misunderstanding. A lot of counties, I know, I'm pretty sure Knox County, what they do is the sheriffs they get budgeted by the county commission. They don't make their own budget. They say, this is what we'd like. County commission decides how much money they actually get. Maybe there is a misunderstanding. What sounded to me like you said was, hey, if they don't make the seizures, They don't get cars, they don't get tires, they don't get gas, they may not get a bonus.
Well, you're talking about down the road. Now, let me tell you, we also, we give anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 a year to drug rehabilitation programs. We give money to the drug coalitions. We give them $1,000 to $2,000 a year, each one of them. We give money to the DARE programs to help them with their T-shirts and things like that. If we started getting low on money, those are the things that would, we would have to quit doing first.
Mr. Hicks, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and Senator Campfield, just for the sake of time, we're going to get this meeting over with one way or the other by 12:30, and we've still got several more witnesses to hear from. Appreciate you being here today, Mr. Pate. Appreciate you being here, Mr. Hicks, and we're going to move on, and then without objection, we're going to take an 8-minute recess. We're going to come back at 11:35, and when we come back, we're going to hear from the Comptroller's office to approximately 12. Then we're going to hear from the TBI from 12 to 12:25, and then try to wrap up in the last 5 minutes. Members, that's my plan. But we're going to take a recess, a quick recess, till 11:35. Again, Mr. Hicks, Mr. Pate, thank you for being here today.
I would re-invite you all to come to our drug task force, and we can show you better than we can tell you what we do.
Thank you very much.